And we're live. Good afternoon, Dr. Greer. Happy Lunar New Year, the year of the
Happy New Year, yes.
Glad you're here, and we've got some of our members online, so let's get started.
Great.
I know former President Obama has been in the news recently about his comments on extraterrestrials. What do you have to say about that?
Well, he had to walk it back. I'm sure he got some sort of blowback for saying what he did. I think he was kind of caught unawares when that question from the podcaster was, do aliens exist or whatever. What he said in his answer was correct. He said they did. He said that he directly never saw the evidence, which he didn't. He was given a briefing document, which we have, and a whole overview of the issue. It was given to John Podesta, who was his senior presidential advisor, who set up the cabinet for Mr. Obama in 2009. So we know that he knew of the subject when he said, yes, they do exist, but he never. And then he said, if these operations are out there, then this is a very big conspiracy, which he kind of giggles because that's the way that people get discredited is being called a conspiracy theorist. And of course, I always point out that's different from actually someone who's uncovered a criminal conspiracy, which is what we're doing. So there is a criminal conspiracy. It is not a theory. It's proven. It's being taken very seriously by law enforcement now. And but yes, when he said that, it's exactly what happened to all these other presidents that I've dealt with, where they get information, and he said it's the first thing he asked about. He part of that interview, he's asked, what was the first thing you wanted to know about? And he said aliens. Bill Clinton said the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, any thinking, I don't think W did, but I mean, if it's someone who's reasonably smart and with it, this is the first thing any president wants to know about, and that is true. But they're not going to get any answers unless they are ones that are being manipulated, like Ronald Reagan got some partial answers to manipulate him into putting billions of dollars into SDI Star Wars,
Right.
Which was actually it was technically against the Soviet Union at that time, but in reality, it was a black budget money redeployed to target ET craft with technologies in space, on NRO satellites and things of this sort, but certainly not the brilliant pebbles. If you Google that and what SDI was, Strategic Defense Initiative, it was really that boondoggle was some money went to that R&D. Most of it went out the back door to operations that were ongoing, targeting and downing extraterrestrial vehicles. So he knew a little bit, but he was only told, and I was told this by Colonel Holman, Holman, before he died, who had been on a interagency committee to try to convince first President Carter, and Carter was too smart to take the bait, and then President Reagan to buy into the whole Star Wars thing. And he admitted to me, he said the card they played to get Reagan to go along with it was the alien threat, which he said, he giggled, and so it was totally made up. Yeah. So they manipulated President Reagan into authorizing that under the ruse of there being an alien threat, which of course everyone who really knows the issue knows that that's nonsense. The only threatening critters out there are humans.
Right.
So that's the history of that. And Obama had the same thing happen that Clinton did. The first time I briefed CIA director for Clinton, it was because he and the president had made directed inquiries into this and had been denied access and weren't given any information. Mm-hmm. And this is something that's mind-blowing. Though you fast forward to this week, where another president says the same thing, that he never got told. And they're not lying. I mean, they would find out information through a source like what we gave them. Right. But in terms of officially being read in or briefed and officially having control over the projects, that hadn't happened in any meaningful way since Eisenhower got pushed aside in the late 1950s. So
Mhm.
that's what we're trying to fix, of course. But
Yep.
for most people, when something like I was on a news show last night with Congressman Burleson of the House Oversight Committee, and this was brought up immediately, of course, and they showed the clip of Obama, and I had to clarify it. And I actually was at my DC place and I picked up the briefing document. I'm sure you saw it, where I said, no, this was the president's Obama's briefing document. But what he said was that he, as president, never got directly to see this,
Right.
like the facilities, the craft, all that. And that's true. I don't think he is at all lying.
Mhm.
So people don't understand his answer. You have to look, he's a lawyer. So his answer was very lawyerly,
Right.
right? Very lawyerly,
Yep.
and very slick, because there was this slick word. What do they say? How do you know they're lying? Their lips are moving. Well, in this case, he didn't have to lie. He just had to say it in a way that kind of didn't make it clear.
Exactly.
But then he subsequently had to retract that. I suspect either someone in his circle or someone in national security said, pull that back, right?
Yep.
Because he totally reversed it when he did a subsequent post on X or somewhere, I don't know where.
Mhm.
So that's what happened with Obama, but that's the backstory of it. And it's very similar to the backstory of pretty much every president since Eisenhower.
Right.
Because, I mean, let's go all the way back to Jack Kennedy after Eisenhower said, beware the military industrial complex. Jack Kennedy, we have the tape recording of his chief steward, the Air Force guy that ran Air Force One, Bill
Mhm.
Holden, saying to me when I was interviewing him, it was an audio interview, and the man broke down in tears. He says, yes, the President Kennedy turned to him and said, he's aware of the subject, but the whole matter is out of his hands and out of his control, and he doesn't know why.
Right.
And that was when they were flying over to give the I am a Berliner speech, when Kennedy went over there to, sort of tear down the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall. And then, of course, subsequently, he pressed on the issue and was going to dissolve a large part of the CIA.
Mhm.
And they killed him, and then subsequently killed his brother, the Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy. But I think the history of this is very interesting. And one of the things, for those of you interested, we are going to be doing a whole week, not 6 days, at our Hot Springs, Virginia, in the mountains here of Virginia, retreat center in May. It's sort of that last week of May. Or around that, you'll get a notice about it, where we're going to do a whole week of me unpacking every secret story. It's the big secrets that I haven't told publicly from 1990 to now of this. And it's going to be a record of the real story of disclosure of 35 years. And you're not going to want to miss it. So we can only take 20 people there because it's not that big of a
Yeah.
meeting space, but it'll be open to 20 people to come in person. And then we'll webinar it for people who can't be there.
Mhm.
So, and at night, if the night weather's nice, we'll try to go out under the stars and, weather permitting, do some CE5 contact. So it'll
Yeah.
be fun for people who are there in person.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, so there's been also a lot of discussion about the large UFO that
Mhm.
Congressman Burleson had spoke about, and actually he got that information from you
Yeah.
originally. So would you like
Yeah.
to talk about that?
Yes. And this was asked about last night on the news network. He is, because he's gotten some information confirming this through a classified official channel, he couldn't talk about the where. And I have to say a caveat here. Um, because I refuse to accept a security clearance, right? So
Right.
I'll go into a SCIF, a secure compartment information facility where top secret information is exchanged, with no clearance and no NDA in place, no
Hmm.
non-disclosure agreement. That's unusual. So I've done that deliberately for 35 years so I don't get hamstrung because everything I'm disclosing are things that are part of illegal programs that should not have any sort of national security classification on them. That's a abuse of the law in and of itself.
Right.
But if you're a member of Congress, they make you do this, right?
Mhm.
So so he is restricted. Now, there are other massive, huge craft that have been downed over the years.
Right.
So I'm saying this as because I like to be crystal clear with people. I don't want to. He on that show has not confirmed that it was the one that I told him about that's in our archive,
Okay.
uh, in a covert archive. It's someone that's not disclosed,
Hmm.
but that was in the mountains outside Seoul, South Korea, and there was a massive craft we brought down a long time ago, decades ago, and it was so huge that it could not be moved. So where it came down, they had to build a building and basically a skiff around it,
Hmm.
and there it sits to this day. So the implication from the whistleblower was someone who worked for about 8 years with baseline clearance across 18 unacknowledged special access projects dealing with this. And so that was first disclosed to me a number of years ago. And of course, I've informed various members of Congress about it. And apparently, they're wanting to go there and see this. Now, it's possible that I'm he may have been told about another large
Yep.
craft that's gone down in other locations. We know this has happened in South America. It's happened in Australia. It's happened all over the United States. But the congressman is clearly talking about out of the country. Now, the other point I made on that show, because it was only a 7-minute quick little news, you know how they are on the news shows.
Yeah.
Um, I also pointed out that there are facilities here in the United States that would be easier to get into because it doesn't involve another foreign government or country, such as the craft that came down that we downed near Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and there where that came down, they built a skiff for it right there,
Hmm.
in that part of Oklahoma, and that's where it sits to this day, underground in a specialized skiff and research facility. So, these exist around the United States. And Congressman Burleson did admit that he learned that out not far from D.C., maybe 45 minutes away, there's a facility where there are craft there also, which is true.
Yep.
So this is all over, the mother lode would be obviously out in the high desert near Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert, where there have been so many craft down, and the Northern Nevada Test Range,
Hmm.
where you go up near Groom Lake and Pahut Mesa and all that, where there are man-made UFOs, but we have weapon systems that are electromagnetic pulse weapons that have downed probably dozens, if not hundreds, of these craft over the decades. And Obama was correct in saying Area 51 per se is not where the action is. He
Right.
probably had heard me say that because it's all moved. That's an old 1950s, early 60s. The bigger, more state-of-the-art places are north of there.
Hmm.
Area 52 and 54. Those are just grids on a map, by the way. That's where the
Right.
Area 51 comes from, that are really more significant, and particularly as you go further north towards Groom Lake and all that. And we have a Green Beret witness who was there some years ago on a live fire exercise and saw the man-made triangles and spheres coming from that, appearing just suddenly, and then going back to their home base, going north towards Groom Lake. And that's, of course, you have Raytheon and Northrop and Lockheed operations out there, and EG&G. So, there's lower hanging fruit than having to schlep to South Korea and getting the South Korean government involved. But for whatever reason, they're pursuing that one right now. Um, and that's fine. I mean, because that member of Congress and some others have been given enough information by us and are also working with some of our former military investigators that we have working to be getting more and more detailed information.
Hmm.
So some of that is information if they've obtained it through a top secret process in a government setting, they can't share with me, which is fine. I mean, I don't care. I already have enough data. My goal is to give them enough information that they can then pursue it further and then get this problem resolved, whether it's through law enforcement or executive orders from the president or Congress or whatever. So that's kind of what's going on with that. But that story, it didn't leak out. The congressman was on another podcast and mentioned this. And then, of course, had people ask me about it because they've heard me talk about this in the past of there being this massive craft that came down. We downed outside, and it's in the mountains outside Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah.
So that's that story. Now, that same whistleblower has identified other facilities here in the States that are key operation facilities and where there are craft, and one in particular that he was in personally. So we have that data. Now, this is why one of the executive orders and what I've recommended to SWAT level or strike force level people in law enforcement in the United States is that those facilities should be brought under control and those assets retrieved, because right now they're operating as its own government above the government.
Yeah.
And so we certainly have enough of that information for them to roll. But it's going to take an authorization from the top. So we'll see what happens. The top being the president.
Right. Speaking of the president, there's been a lot of maybe gossip going on around the internet about President Trump making some official announcement on the anniversary of Roswell. What do you think about?
I've heard this since I first briefed President Clinton in 1993, his CI director in 93. So,
Right.
well, is there a critical mass information that's now
Yes.
being looked at seriously by senior national security, military, and law enforcement? Yes, like I've never seen.
Hmm.
Does that mean that what people are hearing whispers of will happen? I'll believe it when I see it. And that would be nice if it's done properly. Now, if you look at the briefing document for the president, which you can all get on, you can order from us at drstephengreer.com, you'll see that there is a sample speech in there that I provided to him and to other world leaders and British and Canadian and what have you. But hopefully he doesn't go the way of, when I was at one meeting where Don Jr. was there with another guy, and he was talking about how, he gotten so much information from Luis Elizondo, who of course, as everybody knows now, is a master disinformation counterintelligence guy. And I said, okay, that's a red flag problem right there, right? so
Right.
so the big problem is like, who's going to be regarded as an authoritative source on something that the president doesn't have full access to through these systems? And even if he gets access, will he be Reaganized?
You're right.
Reagan was flipped towards portraying the ETs as a threat, even though they weren't, because they're getting their information second, third, fourth hand, even if it's from people in the system that are the foxes in the henhouse. Or is he going to listen to people like us and our whistleblowers and our military folks who know that these aren't a threat? So I think the big problem is this is what I said in the 90s. The whole disclosure process is in play for the hearts and minds of not only the world's leaders like the president, but the minds and hearts of humanity. And if it goes the way of, this horrible documentary Age of Deception, Age of Disclosure, or all the things that have been coming out for 70 years about the false alien threats and the hoax attacks on humans by aliens and raping children and abductions and all this stuff and mutilations and what have you, that's all been done by humans using ET technology and stagecraft. If all of that gets muddled together, which is what the conventional wisdom is in the
Mhm.
media and the internet, and even in government circles, I meet with people all the time, and they think all that is, well, just like I did in 1990, that it's all alien activity. I mean, I had no idea. So unpacking this is complicated. It's a whole hall of mirrors and smoke and mirrors. The question is, to what extent, how astute will this president be and the people around him? Who is he going to listen to? Who is he going to take seriously? Is he astute enough to know when he's being gaslit and deceived? You know,
Yep.
we'll see. Now, I just say this is to be determined. And that's why when I hear these sort of rumors and whispers, yes, I'm hearing that this is now at a very high level, being taken very seriously. Obviously, the briefing, the one pager derived from the briefing document was put in this president's hands for a fact, and he read it that I created. But what else has happened? I don't know. There may be conversations being had by people who are these evil whisperers that have credentials that go in and tell him all manner of false information. And we know that has happened to other presidents like Reagan.
Hmm.
Um, when they tried to do it on Carter was smart. I mean, he was a nuclear engineer and top of his class at Annapolis. So President Carter, even though politically he didn't do very well, and it was a one-term president, he was a very smart guy, and he could see through that smoke screen. The
Right.
question is, and Reagan didn't. Now the question is, will Mr. Trump be able to see through that?
Hmm.
And this is, I can't tell you. I mean, I know as much as anyone you will ever hear on this, but I'll just tell you, I'm hopeful, but I ain't I'm not going to bet my ranch on it, but um, yeah, in my view of it, being an emergency guy and doctor is you hope for the best, you plan for the worst. So we need to plan that this could go sideways because we're a teeny little Goliath and one voice. Uh, and if you look at everyone out there in this subject and the bad actors in the cabal, in the military and intelligence CIA, they're going to be given the president a totally opposite narrative
Hmm.
storyline. And so that's the big question, right? Um, and of course, 99% of everyone in the whole fake ufology world are, alien abductions, and the aliens are coming, and they're the good aliens and the bad aliens, and the reptile people and the Nordic whites and the this and the that, and the whole myth, the whole, you know, Pandora's box of UFO mythology that was a psychological warfare operation unfold over the last several decades by CIA. But people are gullible, and people are not good researchers, and people don't have firsthand information. They have fourth hand, fifth hand, and that's ufology. But that then creeps into the media, and it all creeps into innocent people in the Congress. We saw this happen to Congresswoman Luna,
Yeah.
who's the chair of the UAP task force under the House Oversight Committee, after I briefed her for a couple hours privately in her home district.
Hmm.
And then she got approached by military and intelligence people who told her I was a Russian foreign agent spy, and that they shouldn't listen to me. And then the people came in and gave her false information. Now, to me, I hate to be blunt, it's sort of an IQ test if you're gullible enough to fall for that crap or not. But she felt it. She fell for it.
Well,
We'll see what happens. And I have to just say, well, there are other people who are more astute in the Congress than that. And we'll just have to see what happens. The big question is the buck stops at the Oval Office and that desk. And we're going to have to see to what extent the president will be able to sort out this cacophony and confusing narrative and pictures and competing narratives
mhm.
and find what the actual truth is. And that is the big question in my mind, sitting where I sit, having seen this thing roll out for 35 years, ever since, the early 90s.
Right. And in the case of Luna and many others, I mean, their fears and their belief systems are also manipulated to sway them in certain directions, obviously. So,
Oh God, yes. Remember, if you're someone who it's like the world is as you are. It's a
yeah.
great Vedic saying. So the way your consciousness is, that's how you see the world.
Hmm.
So this is why they do. This is why certain people, CIA operatives like Jim Semivan, with people like Bledsoe, or when you look at Tucker Carlson, what happened to him, he started looking into this. He's a very conservative Christian. They will take this and say, well, this is not in the Bible, therefore it's the agents, these are agents of Satan, and it's the aliens are the work of the devil, and we're in a holy war from another dimension, extra dimension.
Hmm.
So they'll gaslight them with this confusion between the man-made phenomenon, including things that are extra dimensional and evil, actual things from other dimensions that aren't extraterrestrial, and the whole UFO and ET phenomenon. So you have all that gets mixed together in their mind, and all they have to do is hit their religious and spiritual biases and their psychological hot button. They
Yeah,
got them. And this is a real problem because when this comes out, everyone's going to see it through the lens of the consciousness that they have, which is why this year I want to be pushing further and further and further. And that we're about to release a new CE5 movie. It's called CE5, uh,
the new
Next Frontier,
frontier.
a new frontier
Hmm.
of contact. And so the new frontier of contact and of disclosure actually is the consciousness behind this and the understanding of it, and people being prepared to make contact.
Hmm.
That's what we have to pivot towards, because my view of it is that we've set up all the conditions and things are going on very fast, very rapidly in behind the scenes that people aren't hearing about on the internet or news shows. And I think this is going to come out. But if it comes out in the way that we would like, we're going to still need to explain how we approach the visitors. If it
Sure.
comes out the other way, we're going to have to quadruple our efforts, because we're going to have to do something to change human consciousness away from this sort of Armageddon scenario that the lunatic fanatics want it to go in.
Right.
And of course, that scenario obviously enriches the same military industrial warmongers that have benefited from conflict since World War II. So, I mean, I think this is a really huge civilizational struggle, to be honest, that we're involved with here. And I think everyone who are members need to understand that's what this is.
Yeah, and you know, actually having a group like this is very, it's a pivotal thing because we are the people that are going to be approached to help others understand what's happening because people won't know what to do. Most people won't know. Like we're in this all the time, but
Right.
the mass majority of people will be completely clueless, and we already have
Right.
clueless government officials, so they're not going to be helping
Yeah.
in that manner. So the CE5 is going to be a very important turning point in all this.
Yeah. The whole disclosure, well, our disclosure community and the CE5 community are going to be important,
Yeah,
because can't trust the media isn't going to, because they're controlled by this cabal, aren't going to
right.
pivot this that way. But heart to heart, person to person,
Hmm.
you can have a huge effect. And in consciousness, that's why the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind movie, where we talk about the morphogenic field effect, where 1% of people get aligned in consciousness, it shifts the other 99% of people. This is going to become, I knew when I started the project in 1990, that's going to become very important,
Hmm.
because each of us is, we're each universal resonators. Each of us, I love that quote that says, you thinkest thyself a puny form when within thee the universe is folded. In other words, we think of ourselves as just our little self, me or you. In reality, the whole universe and cosmos is folded within each one of us, like a
Hmm.
conscious quantum hologram. So if we attach to that and see that power, not egotistically, but and then come together that way, it can have a huge effect.
Right.
And I think that's why CE5 community, and we're going to be doing, by the way, in here in Virginia, 10 minutes from my home, my farm, we're going to be doing it looks like a whole event in late July with, well, it's not that big of a place. It only holds 350 people, but we hope a lot of you guys can come. We rarely do things on the East Coast, but because of it can rain a lot. But we have an inside and outside venue, and it'll be a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday weekend CE5 gathering. It'll be incredible. Um, and then, like I said, in May, it's a smaller event at our retreat center in Hot Springs, Virginia, where the Jefferson Hot Spring pools are. It's fantastic if you can come. We're also going to have a screening of this new film in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the Imagine Glass Museum on the March 29th, that Sunday.
Yep.
And we're going to have it's a small venue. It's a screening room for 50 people. We'll do twice, so it can 100 people total, and then Q&A with me after. So it's going to be a small event there, but put that on your calendars if you want to come, because that will sell out very quickly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we'll be doing is I want to do a May 9th of this year, just in case you guys have lost track of time, is the 25th anniversary of the Disclosure Project launch at the National Press Club. That was May 9th, 2001. This is going to be May 9th, 2026. So we're planning to do an event in Washington, perhaps with some of the new whistleblowers. So put that on your calendars if you can come to that. We haven't worked it out yet. We're still planning. I just had the concept to do it this past weekend, but but that'll be great, and it'll be a lot of fun. And it's going to be important to do that because the next month is that horrible Steven Spielberg movie called Disclosure. So unfortunately, I never trademarked the term disclosure, and it's been ripped off by every horrible con artist and charlatan out there. And from all the trailer for that movie Steven Spielberg is releasing looks like a horror flick. Now, I don't know, maybe it isn't. Maybe they're just doing that to grab attention, but I have not seen it. But if it looks like what it sounds like, it's going to be something that will, again, put this whole alien thing in a very frightening, terrifying context.
Yeah.
And that's something we're going to have a battle to sort of clarify. So this May 9th event in Washington will help set the stage of what the truth is, because that movie is probably going to have hundreds of millions of people see it. It's a Spielberg movie, and they'll spend 50 or $100 million advertising it.
Yeah.
So and we're just our little operation. So again, we have these big behemoth media and military industrial and CIA and Hollywood sort of people all moving very quickly to hijack the disclosure message into this frightening alien war of the worlds nonsense. So, we have our work cut out for us, all of us, to see, to guide humanity over that chaos into a time of universal peace, and to a time of not just world peace, but interplanetary peace. And the foundation of that is universal consciousness and
Right.
our awareness, which is why the whole CE5 contact concept is so critical.
Exactly. I mean, that is unique to this whole subject matter. I mean, everybody can go do their scooty, do their disclosure stuff, and
Right.
we can stick to C5.
Right.
Um, I'm going to do a few questions here because we're getting
Yeah,
quite a
sure.
few. So, on this basis of consciousness, if you had talked about an ET craft being conscious, is it solely within the physical embodiment of the ship, or is it sort of just, is it linked as a vessel to the actual ETs running the ship?
It's an extension of the consciousness of the commander or the ones who are running it.
Mhm,
But you can have a craft that in and of itself is so advanced that it's conscious, that gets to a very high level. We're talking a level, if you look at the cosmology chart, up around, 6, 7, 8, 9 level civilization. Because in reality, even matter and photons and atoms are consciousness
mhm,
itself, resonating at whatever frequency it is. So at a certain level, a very advanced ET civilization can be one with the craft, and the craft itself is conscious,
mhm,
and could be I remember once out in Arizona near Mount Graham, where the Vatican Observatory is in Arizona, we had this event, and I had an encounter with a sombrero-shaped ET craft that itself was God consciousness
Wow.
at that
I was
level.
there. I remember that.
Yeah. So I think, you're looking at a spectrum of technology, but also technology consciousness. And the higher the civilization is, the more the integration of higher states of consciousness with the technology becomes seamless. Now, at a civilization that's maybe a level 3, 4, 5, that may not be the case, but
Hmm.
there is still a consciousness interface with guidance, communications, and what have you, which is why the so-called P3 or psionic operators have been trained to hijack that capability, bring the craft in over a strike zone and knock them down,
Hmm.
right? So they're using, I'm quite sure this is why General Stubblebine wanted me involved with his program, because I was a medical doctor, but also a meditator who understood this and understood the interface between consciousness, thought, and these technologies. But he certainly didn't disclose to me, we want to refine our abilities to kill these guys, right?
Right.
So he just used flattery and deception, and I told him to buzz off. But but I think that that is a program that's been going on for a long time, and it's
Mhm.
gotten refined enough that the psionic P3 operators are able, not all the time, but on occasion, break into and basically hijack the consciousness thought interface with the machine and get the craft to come into 3D over a range and then knock it out, take it
Mhm.
down with an electromagnetic pulse and scalar weapon. And of course, I've been to those sites now, and law enforcement's very aware of this as well. They're
Yeah.
aware of the psionics. They're aware of the human trafficking and child trafficking, that where people are tortured and put into the psionic P3 training programs. All this is very much on the radar of law enforcement.
Yep.
Yep.
So another question here for one of our members. It's,
Hmm.
knowing this reality that ETs exist and just dealing with normal day-to-day life,
Yeah.
is, it's kind of hard to bridge those two realities. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, to me, it's just always been part of my paradigm.
Right.
I think it's hard if you're trying to shove this in the face of people in family, friends, or work who aren't open to it. What I find is that that's something I don't do.
Hmm.
I have some distant family members who don't want to hear anything about this, and in-laws. I go, fine, that's fine. You can. The Earth is flat, and you can believe in the Flat Earth Society and Newtonian physics, and we're the only life in the universe. And if all of this was true, the professors at Harvard and NBC News would tell you. I mean, there are a lot of people like that, even in my extended family. Fine. I tell people just leave it be. I don't think it's hard to integrate this into your normal life unless you're creating conflict over it. There's no point.
Hmm.
The wiser approach, I always say to people, now, if it's a personal issue, then you just have to meditate on it and integrate this reality with the reality out here. But that bridge is all in our 7 books and 6 documentaries. The one that we're releasing will be number 6. And it's just a matter of being in depth understanding that. But I think without knowing more of the background of this question, I think a lot of people have a hard time integrating it because the world out there doesn't acknowledge but
Right.
0.0001% of what we're talking about. And there is sort of a disconnect, and it creates its own disconnect.
Hmm.
But just think of this, the pioneers in any area were always on the fringe,
Exactly.
because it has to start somewhere. It's got to
Hmm.
start somehow. And that's what we are, right? We're the pioneers. So view yourself as a pioneer into a strange land, or basically. And so that's how change happens. It doesn't happen instantly in everyone. By the time the whole globe has this paradigm, who knows if I'll be around? But that's not the point. The point is that the directional change in human civilization, that trajectory, is what we have to see happen.
Hmm.
And we can do that, and we must do it. And so there's going to be a disconnect between what we know to be true. But I had that weird experience when I was 4 or 5. I'll just tell a personal story. So I'm this, a poor white trash kid and, no shoes in a shack in the South. And I'm walking around and I'm going, and a plane would go over. This would have been the late 50s, early 60s. And I'd hear noisy trucks on the road. And I go, this shouldn't be here. There was part of me that knew all of that. Now, this would have been the late 50s. Remember,
Hmm.
we had free energy in the early 20th century. We had anti-grav vehicles by October 1954.
Right.
So, and this would have been 5. So I just, on my inner being, I went, this isn't right. I was like, very strange. I have this clear memory of it. Like, none of this is supposed to be here still. What are we doing?
Hmm.
And so for me, being in this world has always been a strange experience. I hate to say it. I mean, people say, well, you're strange. I said, no, this world is fucking strange. Excuse my language. But, you know, this is what's strange is this, that we're living in a
Pretty weird.
world using, hundreds of year old technology that should have gone the way of horse and buggies 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And I felt this when I was in the late 50s, early 60s as a young boy, even though I had no reason to know that. I just knew it inside. So, I think what you have to do is integrate the truth of all this with your paradigm and
Mhm.
just develop a sense of humor that the world is on 100-year delay. But
Yep.
that's what happens with corruption. I mean, corruption and money and power and the industrial fascists saw to that all of this was kept away from academia, education, most government, most whatever. And so it's a paradigm clash. It's like future shock,
Hmm.
that book.
Yep.
And there's a certain part of that we just have to integrate and say, well, and get a sense of humor about it, that's the time we live in, and c'est la vie, and
Right.
and just take it in stride. But
You have to deal with it.
uh and deal with it. And in terms of other people not really being on the page with you, just, if people know you're interested, they'll ask the questions.
Hmm.
If they're not interested, they'll just ignore you. If they ask a question, here's the trick. Let people ask a question and then be versed in this. Memorize the 7 books, read them, annotate them, memorize them. Everything should be memorized. All the documentaries, see them 4, 5, 6 times, memorize them. And then you can speak intelligently, facts, figures, evidence to anybody if they ask. Now, if they ask and then they shut down, say, okay, right. The bridge that goes a little too far for the average human is this interface between consciousness, matter, CE5, those concepts. Interestingly, I was just on a podcast before this one with a pretty major news media figure.
Hmm.
You'll see when it comes out. And his whole biggest interest was CE5 contact
Right.
and consciousness, which shocked me actually,
Hmm.
because he's part of a sort of a conservative news network, right? And I thought, oh well, we'll see where this goes. No, that was the most. So I think the other thing is to not be prejudiced or biased because you've put someone in a box. You never know who's going to be interested in
Never know.
this.
That's right.
Never know. And more people are than you can imagine. Remember, 55% of the US population believe we're not alone and the UFOs are real.
Hmm.
That's more people than voted for any president since I can't remember in
Right.
terms of percentage, right?
Hmm.
And way more than most members of Congress get in an election because they're really close. So I tell people it's in the awareness, and it's really about learning how to master the knowledge so you speak to it properly,
Hmm.
right? Because you don't want to go beyond what people can take and understand. So there has to be this like an emotional IQ and intellectual understanding. Where is this person coming from? So if they're asking about nuts and bolts, don't go off into remote viewing and CE5 contact.
Right.
be able to answer the nuts and bolts questions, right?
Right. Plus, I mean, we have to live our daily lives no matter what's happening around us,
Yes, we do.
and the other part of this will unfold as it's supposed to. That
Yeah, even if our daily lives are rooted in the 17 and 1800s and we're living like troglodytes, but that's the way it is. Right. We're one step out of Neanderthal territory, how we're really living. And anybody who understands these technologies, how long they've been around, I mean, everything we're talking about's been around since before I was born, and I'm 70. So
Mhm.
it's like, it was like, Jesus, it is sort of a mind shock, and I sympathize. I call this disclosure PTSD
Yeah,
because no, it is that whole
it is.
future shock concept that for a lot of people, and it was interesting. I was having dinner with some of our special forces guys a couple months ago, and they said, "Oh, there's a bunch of senior people in military and in the government that are having an oh shit moment." Excuse my language. That's what they called it. Their words, not
Right.
mine. And I go, yeah, I'm sure they are, because they're realizing that what they said is that what the old doc has been saying, meaning me, for 30 years is all true, all of it, and that
Mhm.
it's worse than they thought in terms of threats to the national security and the criminal nature of this organization. But it's also then they cross over to realizing, like the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff had, Admiral Wilson in 97, where he goes, the best thing I know about is the B-2 stealth bomber, but I've now learned that there are technologies that are in this parallel secret government operations that can do circles around it.
Mhm.
And what that did was shut him down. He says, checkmate, I can't go any further. Plus he was threatened.
Right.
But he was also threatened with being demoted and retired, which means big pay cut. If you get a star taken off your lapel, if you're a general or admiral, your retirement pay goes down a lot.
Mhm.
So this is what they do to people like him who are good men trying to get to the truth. But it's so and it is shocking for them. There is an element where this is traumatic. And that's why we have to speak to it in a way that says, and figure out where is that person, where are they? Are they ready to hear this? And
Mhm.
what are they really willing to hear? Right.
Right.
Now, most people, if I don't have a lot of time with a congressman or a senator or whoever, it's a bit of drinking water from a fire hose with me. But they'll ask and I'll answer. But boy, at the end of it,
Better be ready.
consistently, everyone says, my mind is officially blown. It's going to take me a while to unpack this.
Right.
And I'll go, yes, sir, here's a briefing document. You can study this. So I think we have to also give people the tools to study
Mhm.
it,
Right.
which is why we've created these two new books, this disclosure and illustrated history of all the crash retrievals. But we published the president's briefing document
Mhm.
with redactions that, anybody who can read can get the whole full picture out of that.
Right.
And it's not that long. It's 300 some pages. Yeah.
So recently, Dick Russell wrote about Burleson getting the go-ahead from President Trump to visit military bases where there's been downed craft and
Hmm.
possible ET bodies.
Hmm.
Do you have any commentary on that?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's what we've been working on.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with him and gotten him embedded with our special forces, Green Beret, and other people, and people in the administration and elsewhere. So yes, and that is happening. Um, but I think how it plays out is to be determined, right? Because this presupposes that just because it's a little bit like the story when Vice President Hubert Humphrey back in the 60s rolled up on Sandia National Labs out here in outside Albuquerque, New
Mhm.
Mexico, in his motorcade. And he had heard there was in that covert in the mountain, the Sandia Mountains, were ET materials and all this. And he rolled up. And I know a man who was a security officer there at the time, who's since passed away. And they came out. And of course, the Secret Service was there. He's the Vice President of the United States. And he said, Vice President Humphrey wants to go in here. See, and they said, we have orders to shoot to kill anyone who attempts to get into this facility, and that includes the Vice President of the United States. I am
Wow.
quoting. Now,
Yep.
think about this, all right? So I've explained this. This is hardball stuff. So it's like, you and what frickin' army are going to get it? So one of the problems is that people have this misguided idea that a senior member of the legal government can wave their wand and this criminal enterprise is going to say, "Oh, okay,"
Right.
right? It's
Right.
like going to the worst part of the mafia, running heroin, the Gambinos or something,
Hmm.
and knocking on the door of their pizza parlor, which is a front for their heroin and trafficking, and say, "Hey, gee, will you take me through the back room so I can see all your heroin operation?"
Right.
They're going to go, "Oh yeah, come on in."
Sure. Sure.
Right. This is what I told Burchett when he said he had gone down to Eglin, where there is a facility there underground
Hmm.
that is off-world communications, extraterrestrial communications monitoring. It's
Yep.
called that. And we have witnesses, whistleblowers who've been in there, but they just knocked on their door. They're getting some suits. Yeah, you're in your suit with your congressional aide who's like, 30, showing up at a place like that. Well, of course, weren't shown anything.
Right.
So now I've been very blunt about this. Is that no, you've got to have this where it's quite clear that this is authorized and that not to is treasonous, and you will be arrested. You can be executed for treason. At a certain point, you're going to have to play hardball
Hmm.
with people who are psychopaths, sociopaths, criminals, because if they're already committing treason, wet works, murders, kidnappings, abductions, embezzlement of God knows how much money over the decades, trillions. What do they care? They'll just say, you know. So
Exactly.
this is real politic. I know it's brutal, and this is the world I have to advise people on. But they know this now. I mean, these people's eyes are wide open.
Hmm.
So all I can do is put them in the right direction, give them the tools, and tell them where things are, and then say, here's what you need to have to do this.
Right.
And then look, I have no official standing, don't want one. Um, but all I can do is be the senior architect or advisor to it. So,
So we'll go back to some of the consciousness
mhm,
questions. So,
sure.
is being on a UFO or UAP and having an ET experience while astral traveling considered to be a real experience, or would that experience be considered to have been concocted by, like maybe an ARV, like a human, operation and their pilots?
Well,
Would
it can
that?
be both. It can be both.
Okay.
Remember, I mean, a lot of people who are abducted by human assets, they're not physically abducted, they're astrally abducted.
Hmm.
Now, if you look at some of my other interviews over the years, this gets into esoteric, but they have astral extraction systems. When we were out near White Sands with Sherry Adamack and some other people back in the early 90s, mid 90s, she was targeted with an astral extraction system that was a
Hmm.
weapon system, and she was almost pulled out of her body. Um, and I grounded her back. But um, so it could be covert. If you're doing a natural consciousness experience with your body of light, you can have a legit, real experience on board an ET craft. So what
Hmm.
I'm saying is that all of the above is possible. Do you have enough? Have you studied this subject well enough to know the distinction between what I just described? There are two things here, right?
Right.
And one could be something where you're encountering or having something happen that's being induced by a covert system, weapon system, human, or one could be an innate consciousness experience. And then there's another category, which is a huge problem right now. And that is every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there that I met think that we're doing CE5 using psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca, DMT, ecstasy. And I'm going, no, we don't. It's not allowed. It's
No.
not necessary. It damages your neurons. And don't tell me every new age hippie girl in Santa Monica is a shaman priestess who can do this for you, right? I'm sorry, this is nonsense. Um, but that's the other thing that's happening. So people will think, oh, cool, I'll do this. Well, I don't want to be disciplined enough to do a regular meditation routine or believe in myself. So I'm going to drop acid, or I'm going to drop DMT, or whatever it is, or go on an ayahuasca shaman retreat. And yeah, you can have some experiences, but the question is it a neurochemical experience? Is it real? Is it Memorex? Is it alter? Is it accurate? Because you're doing it through a artificially chemically induced hallucinogenic state, as opposed to the development intrinsically of your natural higher states of consciousness, which is
Right.
what I recommend. And this is not to say that some of those things for severe PTSD, or in ancient times when there was a wise, spiritual, enlightened person who would be a true shaman, not a fake one. There are no true ones around anymore. They died with the Colombians massacring all those people. The Columbia, the whole Columbus and the white invasion and Christianity and all that. But now everyone thinks they're a shaman, right? They take a weekend course, become a shaman. Here, take this DMT, or here's some ayahuasca and go vomit and mess yourself. No, this is not, so, but no, that's another whole category of this now,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, uh, which I'm not saying that the people have not had some legitimate experiences on those substances, but it's not necessary. And even the Native American people in South America have even admitted doing it the way Westerners do it, which is like a recreational drug. It's not like it's done
Right.
once as a portal and you're guided by a spiritually enlightened person. It just becomes another trip.
Hmm.
And then they're doing it all the time. And there's no wisdom in that. It's just a pop culture zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
And I make this distinction. People, oh, you're no fuddy-duddy. I said, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm actually telling you that all these experiences are actually attainable through natural evolution of consciousness, and believing you can do it,
Right.
and doing it with a crutch. I mean, if it's one time, perhaps with someone super enlightened, which is hard to find, frankly, most of these people are just charlatans, then it could open a doorway if it once, like in an initiation, which is
Hmm.
how it was used in ancient pre-Columbian times.
Right.
Not now, but that is a big problem. So you have three things that could be going on: your own innate ability with an astral onboard experience with ETs, something that is induced through these interface technologies with consciousness and technology that covert programs have, but that always has a scary, forced feel to it,
Yeah.
very much so. And then the things that happen when people are tripping on a whole handful of cocktail of pharmaceuticals and hallucinogens.
Right.
So, so
Um,
people ask I know I offend everyone when I talk like this, but because I was just in LA a couple weeks ago and at a meeting with some celebrities, and about three-quarters of people there were going, "Yeah, man, but if we go out and take some LSD," I'm going, "No, we don't have to do this."
right. I
But
mean,
it's almost everyone out there now. But
everyone
it's
wants
just, and
fast.
look, I mean, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s. Everybody was dropping acid and doing this stuff. Everyone thinks it's so cool. And, oh, this is those zeitgeist. I said, yeah, we did that 50, 60 years ago. So just chill. Yeah, you think you're cool. It ain't. And I never did it because even then, by the time I had my near death experience and early experiences, I knew that the real consciousness experiences are infinitely more extraordinary than anything that you could do chemically,
Hmm.
artificially. So I just never did it, and
Yeah.
and do not recommend it. And but it's a free world. Do what you want, but I think you need to learn to develop your higher states of consciousness in these experiences without a neurochemical hallucination happening.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So two more quick questions. We're
Yeah,
running out of time.
that's
So
all right.
if w- would a person only make contact based on their where they're at consciously? Um,
Well,
does the conscious,
everything is based on where you are.
yeah,
So I love that expression, Vedic. The world is as you are. You're going to perceive everything from the level of consciousness that you are in or have
Mhm.
attained and your level of understanding, which the higher your understanding of the cosmology that I've taught and of consciousness as the central operating system of the universe and all of its expressions through higher states of consciousness, you're going to understand it better. For example, if we're out in the field and we see an object, it disappears, but it's out in the field sort of in an astral energy form, just subtle enough you can see some of it. Well, most people won't see it, other people will.
Mhm.
That's because their level of consciousness, which brings along your neural pathways of your brain and eyes and ears. So you actually develop more refined perceptual abilities from higher states of consciousness. So someone who is in a rather, you know, experienced state of consciousness and perceptual ability that goes along with it may see the craft shimmering in the field in its quasi astral, partially in this dimension way, and someone else will say, well, there's nothing there at all.
Right.
Now it's just two people, right? Two
Mhm.
perceptions, but one reality. But it's based on the perceptual ability of each person. And as you develop consciousness in meditative states, but also study this, and this is when I take people out personally. I'll say, now just look out there with like you're like in a trance, or like when you're daydreaming and just staring, and just relax and go into quiet consciousness and see what you see,
Mhm.
right? So there's a part of it where you will sense it in your heart and mind, and then your eyes will begin to see what's there when it's not 3D. I mean, obviously any idiot can see a fully materialized craft in the meadow,
Right.
but that's often not how they can do this without being targeted and hit
Right.
with a weapon, and we don't want that to happen for them or us. So this gets into these very advanced concepts of conscious CE5 contact with consciousness and perceptual abilities that include what used to be called the siddhis in the Vedas, Siddhis. And
Mhm.
so I think that whether you're having contact or on a craft, you're going to see things at the level of your consciousness and perceptual abilities that have evolved. And
Mhm.
everyone's on a different spectrum.
Yep.
So, if you have 30 people, or in this case, in July, 350 people, everyone's at a different place. So perceptions will be different
Mhm.
because the world is as you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to understand. It's not to negate, everyone should have their own experience validated and say that's that experience, right?
Mhm.
Even if they're hallucinating on a substance, they're having an experience. Now, whether it's objectively there or something as a neurochemical reaction to the hallucinogen, that's where it gets into a question. And I think this is why you also want to question it if it has this scary, creepy feel, like when I know the covert human programs that have these technologies.
Mhm.
That's what happened to me, by the way. If people remember the story, after I briefed Prince Hans Adam von Liechtenstein, the crown prince. They don't have a king. And then that night, there was an attempt to abduct me out of that hotel room, and I
Mhm.
was targeted. And it was it was the darkest, scariest thing. And I knew it was human. They didn't think I would know that. But what it did is I was able to connect to that energy field and then see who was operating the system and how it was operating. This
Mhm.
was in July of 1994, so almost 32 years ago. And it was quite clear to me the difference in the feel and how that was operating versus an innate experience astrally or in a lucid dream with the ETs. It was
Mhm.
like night and day. The
Right.
man-made electromagnetic warfare stuff is very much dark, very much, and the ET actual contact and consciousness, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was actually to their detriment because I was able to track back to where and how they were doing this. All they did was expose themselves to me,
Right.
right? And it didn't fool me. Now they thought it would fool me so they could flip me over to the dark side
Mhm.
to agree with this cabal that we needed World War III and Armageddon so that Jesus would come back in a cloud. I mean, that was what Prince Hans, no, I mean, that's what he told me. We have to have the end of the world in Armageddon so Christ will return. That's what he told me. And he believed it.
Yep.
And I went, yeah, I don't really think that's where we're headed or should be heading, but we agreed to disagree. But yeah.
So,
By the way, a lot of the recounting of all this 35 years of those kind of meetings and lessons, that's what we're going to do in May,
yeah. And
towards the end of May at Hillcrest. And so
yeah,
that's going to be great. Those of you who can come should get on a list quickly.
yeah, I'm going to post. I know some people are asking here. I'm going
Yeah.
to post dates, and we don't have tickets and all that set up yet, but at least I'll put the dates out on our membership
Yeah.
platform. And so and the few questions that may not have been answered, I will answer them offline. So last
Yeah.
question,
Yeah.
because we're running out of time. Do you have any advice for people that experience some apprehension when seeing future events after, prolonged high frequency meditations?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen a lot of future events stretching out for several thousand years, and a lot of it's beautiful, and some of the near term stuff isn't. You just have to remember that if you center into the aspect of yourself that is infinite, eternal, goes on forever, that's your inner deep consciousness soul,
Mhm.
there's no fear. And remember, this is why, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, this is why Arjuna was told by Krishna on the battlefield, he said, a little of this, and that this is a capital T, this state of pure higher consciousness eliminates all fear. So
Mhm.
there's no fear if you can be centered into the place beyond fear, the place beyond time and space, the place beyond the mutability of our physical bodies.
Right.
And so that is a true, what they used to call a Shambhala warrior, a
Mhm.
spirit warrior, is because you're grounded in that. So if there's any fear that comes with that, just see it in that perspective and go deeper into the experience of yourself as this infinite field of consciousness that is part and parcel of the individuality that is yourself that goes on forever. And then you're not afraid. I was asked this afternoon by this rather famous news host about being, I said, no, I'm never afraid. Um, you know, there are things that I don't like. I mean, I don't like being tortured, and I don't like being defamed and betrayed and run over and abused like I have been by ufology for 35 years. But, it's not what I am, and I can go beyond it with some venting. Poor Raven and my wife. Um, there's the
That
other thing.
it's in the classified files.
Those are in the classified files, and every other word expletive deleted. You know, you have to just you deal with that. But when the day is done, you have to be in touch on a deeper level with who you really are, which is goes beyond the field of the animal spirits, fight and flight of fear.
Yeah.
And that is a shamanic almost, or a meditation journey in consciousness and developing yourself and understanding who you are to a level that it's not just intellectual, but it's experienced.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, what am I going to be afraid of?
Right.
Right?
It's a kind of freedom,
Yeah,
actually.
it
Feels
is
like.
freedom. And that's why I say that until someone can transcend fear and the fear of death, they really can't live. They're not liberated. They're holding themselves back due to this anxiety and fear and the animal state of consciousness, the small self, the
Mhm.
little self. And so let your individuality, that drop, identify with and be part of that ocean. And then you're the ocean. You can't be afraid.
Right.
Yeah. There's no need to be afraid if you realize that's what you really are deep within.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Greer. This was a
thank you guys.
conversation, and our members for being here. And
Yeah, thank you guys. You're really helping us and spread the word. We need more members. We want to build this up. You know, we're having to sort of raise, you know, $700,000-800,000 this year to pay for this special forces and other teams if it's going to continue all year. So we need people's help, and we need funding help, and we need networking help. And you guys doing your membership is part of helping us, and I want to thank you guys for it.
Great. Well,
All right.
all right. Thank you all.
All
And
right. Have a good one.
thank you.
See you next time.